Well, welcome guys to another Waynos Fotos camera video, and today we're going to be talking about this little thing here. Now, this little thing here is the Canon 35mm, and it's a cute little lens, and it's not too expensive either. So it actually is quite affordable, and it's in our RF range. So it's for the new mirrorless Canon cameras, and the lens is really good for what you pay. So let's roll that intro and let's have a talk about why is this lens so good for video, and what are the pros for it, and is there any cons to it? Well, this lens is one of the first RF lenses that I bought, and it kind of lives pretty much on my camera because I do a lot of video, not so much stills. It can be used as a stills lens, but I think it actually fits the purpose of a video lens far better. Now, the lens goes to 1.8, so you can get that fairly low depth of field with the focal length, and also it has a stabilized button on it. So if you can see that just right here, when we get into it, there it is right there. It has a stabilized button. So this lens is actually stabilized. Now, that is actually a big thing when it comes to video, because with video, it's a little bit different what you want out of a lens compared to like a stills camera, because one of the major things is camera shake and jitters in the camera footage. Now, so you want to be able to put your camera on a gimbal or on some sort of stabilizing device or some sort of monopod, or even when you hand hold it, be able to have some little aids in the camera that can help you get rid of those shakes and jitters and give you a kind of smooth image, even though it may look like you're holding it by hand. So all of these factors can help you. Now, if you've got a mirrorless camera that's got in-body stabilization, and you've got stabilization in the lens, that can really help somewhat. Now, the beauty of this particular focal length here, and the benefit of this focal length, is it's not too wide to give you that wobbles effect that you get on some of the Canon cameras. It's not too telephoto to kind of make the shakes kind of unworkable when you're shooting. So once you get up to 85mm or a longer focal length, and you've got it not locked off on a tripod, it becomes a little bit difficult to control the jitters and shakes in the camera. And that's where this lens comes in. It's just the right focal length to give you really nice footage on gimbals. And the good thing about it is, because it's a prime, it doesn't change the balance on a gimbal. So if you're using like a zoom lens, a lot of the zoom lenses extend, or the lenses move inside, which upset the balance of the gimbal. But a lens like this, because it's a prime lens, won't. Now, people may say that they want to shoot with a zoom lens because it gives them that variation. And I agree with that. It does give you that variation. But unless you want to buy a very expensive zoom lens where it's got a continuous aperture through, or it doesn't extend, then you're kind of a little bit stuffed, because it makes the gimbal go out of balance because you're changing the balance of the gimbal. Now, your gimbal may have strong motors, may be able to cope with it, but when you're sort of holding it at length or moving it around, it just doesn't stabilize the footage quite as well. So that's a disadvantage, and it's something you need to consider when you're shooting video and what lens you're using. Now, I've balanced a 85mm 1.2 on, and that lens is about 1.2 kilos, and I've got it to balance on a gimbal, but it works if you just want to walk around slowly with it and keep it balanced. But if you want to do some faster movements, the gimbals generally struggle, because it's just the weight out front, it just becomes a little bit difficult for it to be balanced. So that's why I consider this lens here to have all of the pros for video shooting. And I really can't think of another lens that is as good. Now, you can get the 50mm, and you can buy the cheaper 50mm, but they're not stabilized. And that's where this one's got a little bit of an advantage. Now, the cons to this lens is that it would be really nice if it was a red ring, because it's not quite as sharp as the red ring lenses. And that's probably a little bit of a disadvantage. It's not such a big issue with video, because if you're shooting in your 180-degree rule, you should be getting natural motion blur. And generally with video, unless you're sort of dead still or locked off, when people move, you're getting that natural motion blur anyway. So it's not so a critical a thing when you have a lens that's not that sharp. Now, when I say not that sharp, I mean, in post, you can tweak the clarity or the sharpness, and it's not such a big deal with these digital cameras. That's what I found. And I tend to not like such a super sharp image when it comes to video anyway. It kind of looks a little bit digital. You want it to look a little bit softer, a little bit smoother. So I don't think that fact that this lens is not quite as sharp as the red rings is an Achilles heels. But if it was a red ring, it would be a lot more expensive. So this lens is under $1,000 US. It's under $1,000 AUD. So it's not that expensive. It's quite affordable, and it's something you can have in your kit that's not going to break the bank. Well, anyway, guys, let me know if you've got this lens, this 35mm lens, and have you used it for video, and what did you think about it? Do you think that this lens here is worth the money, and do you use it much? Do you think that it's a good recommendation? Well, anyway, I found it to be a very good lens, and I can recommend it. Okay, guys, leave your comments down below, and I will see you next vid.